Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us on what is a historic day for women and families in Connecticut. And I want to start with a special thank you to one of the women who brought us here. Caitlin Pereira stepped up and ran for state representative as a young mom, and she brought her 3-year-old daughter, Parker, around with her when she campaigned in 2018. When she was barred from using Clean Elections funding for childcare for Parker, she did not stand down. She stood up and fought to make sure that childcare was an allowable expense for our citizen election program. Caitlin and Parker, unfortunately, can't be with us this morning to celebrate, but we thank her for her tenacity because her fight made this legislation possible, and it's a testament to the change that can happen when women step up and fight for what's right. There are so many people to thank who made this possible. OPM Secretary Melissa McCaw, Vice Chair of the Council on Women and Girls, Governor Lamont, and in his office, Mary Glassman, and my General Counsel, Cherie Phoenix Sharp, the leader of our Council on Women and Girls, and other members of the OPM team, Claire Coleman and Danielle Palladino. Notice they're all women. Have you noticed? Okay. Other key partners in the legislative process, the Secretary of the State's office, and I think Shannon Wegley is right here behind me, Representatives Borer and Farrar, and you're going to hear more from them later, Senator Flexer, who chairs the GAE committee, and Senator Moore, who stepped up and provided some strong commentary and support during the Senate debate, where I will, and Senator Moore will correct me if I'm wrong, but there were 35 yeses in our state Senate and only 1 no. So a powerful advocate in Senator Moore. So Connecticut has a mixed record on equity when it comes to politics and public service. Ella Grasso was our first woman governor when she was elected in 1974, the first woman in the entire country to be elected in her own right. But in the years since 1974, we have not always lived up to that trailblazing path, and we've been stuck at about 25% of our state Senate members being women. So today, as I preside over the state Senate and I look over the circle, I see 26 men and only 9 women. So we have more to do, and that's why this legislation is so exciting. So when I first stepped up to run for office, it was May of 1992, and my daughter Ava was 5 months old. I was so fortunate to have a live-in babysitter in my mother-in-law and a very hands-on husband. Not everybody is so lucky. People like Caitlin really needed child care to be paid for, and there are a lot of male candidates who have told us that they would make use of this as well. Studies show that women and men who run for office at similar rates win at similar rates, but we need to level the playing field for women, and that's what this legislation does. This legislation puts into law that those expenses for childcare can be paid for by the CEP. This legislation also speaks to our boards and commissions and makes them more equitable as well. So I'm very, very proud to introduce some of our legislative partners, and we are going to start with our stalwart advocate in Senator Moore. Senator Moore.
Good morning. I'd like to start at the beginning because none of this could happen if we didn't have a governor who was open to new ideas by creating the council. When Governor Lamont was putting together his teams, looking at different programs and what he wanted to do, I called him and he said, "Hey, Marilyn, how are you?" I said, "I'm good, Ned." I said, "But I think you forgot something." He said, "What is it?" And he said, "Do you want to be put on one of the teams?" I said, "No, but I didn't see anything for women and girls." He said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I want a team for women and girls." He said, "Well, let's do it." And so he formed, he allowed us to put together this council. We came from across the state, talking to women, and I was in a room and presented the council to a group of people, and Lieutenant Bysiewicz was sitting there, and she said, let's do this, because we need a place to land. We need a place to recognize that women and girls have been left out of the system, have not been given the same opportunities as everybody else. So you have to always remember the root of where things are coming from. So I thank the governor, and I thank the lieutenant governor. But also, Caitlin could have stepped back and said, "Oh, well, I can't get the funding," and walk away. But she didn't. She didn't. She took her seat. She made her voice heard. And that's what we all have to do when we see something, no matter how long it's happened. We have to take that moment in time to stand up and say, this is wrong, and we're going to fight it. And I'm so proud of all of the people who came together to make this happen, because this is just another step in bringing equity. My voice since Black Lives Matter and COVID has been about equity. I'm willing to stand on the floor of the Senate and go toe-to-toe with anyone on equity. And this is a step toward that. So I thank all of the legislators that supported this, but also I thank Caitlin for stepping up and having the courage to say, I'm not just going to sit down and take it. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
So now I'd like to bring up Representative Borer.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. And I, too, want to thank Governor Lamont for initiating the Council on Women and Girls, and, of course, Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz for her leadership on that council. I'm a member, and I see all the great work that's being done, and I want to thank all the advocates for their brave journey to bring this forward. This bill has two major critical components, and both create opportunity and a level playing field for those who want to serve in government roles. And the first is the daycare expense coverage, and I think we could all draw on our own experience, those of us who are elected and who have tried to campaign as a parent. My son is 20 now, but at the time I first started campaigning, he was a baby, and I would spend a good deal of my time trying to juggle shifts to get friends and family to provide that daycare coverage, because those long hours are grueling and it's just not affordable to cover daycare every day. And that just goes so far because you could go to the well so many times, right? And some people don't have family in the area. So then I had the bright idea that I was going to bring them on the campaign trail with me, and I was going to make headquarters family friendly and bring your kids and your crayons, and we're going to do all this great family stuff. And that sounds like a lot of fun, but reality is it's very difficult to juggle those priorities when you're running for office, because you're spending your time trying to care for your child, and you're trying to get on the phone with the voter or hit the doors. And voters deserve your undivided attention when they're making a decision. They need to know what your goals and your vision are. And if you can't provide that to them, then you're at a disadvantage. And that's what this bill's all about, removing those disadvantages for women when they're running for office. I believe women could do it all, but we don't have to do it all at the same minute. It's okay. So I know somebody mentioned earlier that we have about 33% of our General Assembly is made up of women elected officials, but I just want to put that into perspective for you. In 10 years, we've increased a net of 7 seats. That's not even one per average, one a year on average. So that is certainly not a pace that we want to see in Connecticut, and we need to change that pace, and this bill will help us to change that pace. The other component of the bill, I was very proud to help champion that with Representative Farrar and Representative Fox and Senator Flexer, Secretary of State Mary Glassman, I know, who's here. We spent a lot of hours because we wanted to make sure we got it right for Connecticut, and I think we did. We have such rich diversity here in Connecticut, and it's important that we leverage that strength when those are making decisions and shaping policy for Connecticut. And if we don't allow those different perspectives to come to the table, then that provides for groupthink, and I don't think that's the way we want to govern here in Connecticut. So we're very happy about this bill. I just also want to make a quick note that in addition to requiring that the composition of our boards and commissions for the state not only with a goal to mirror our consensus, but it also brings streamlining and transparency to the approach of the appointment process. It provides an easier way for residents to identify what boards and commissions have vacancies so that they could apply. And it encourages outreach to communities and organizations that may have interested qualified candidates. So I think overall these are two great components, and I hope to see a change. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a little ways to go. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So Dorinda was speaking about the appointments to boards and commissions and the push in this legislation to get more women and more diverse people to step up. And the way we accomplish that is that there's much more transparency. People can apply online via a website, and also that appointing authorities can work with many organizations. And the Council on Women and Girls is blessed to have over 100 organizations that are friends of our council that can be that conduit and that network to help us find really great people to serve on boards and commissions. So we're going to go to Representative Kate Farrar, who is a key player, and then I'm going to bring up Senator Flexer. Representative Farrar.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, everyone. I also want to echo the thanks to the incredible group behind me and the Governor's Council on Women and Girls, which is truly a statewide effort. And as someone who is just into the first term and is proud to have been a lifelong champion for women and girls, today is a great day. And one of the aspects the Lieutenant Governor focused on really is this component of our boards and commissions. It's something that doesn't get as much public attention potentially as our elected roles as legislators, but our 160 boards and commissions play an essential role in our policymaking and really giving recommendations and guidance often to us as legislators. And I think what is so tremendous about this legislation is for the first time our state is saying that we do have a goal that by 2026 our state boards and commissions reflect the diversity of our state. And it's not just that our democracy thrives when we have diverse representation, but it really is about the talent in our state. And I know, especially as someone who grew up in this state and is so proud of that diversity, our talent pool needs to be really harnessed to encourage folks to be a part of our boards and commissions. And I also want to acknowledge the Secretary of State's role in this work over the years in reporting on this important data for boards and commissions. And one of the key parts of this legislation is to ensure that there is reporting every 2 years so that we can really stay on top of this collaborative approach to the appointment process. So once again, thank you to the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor's Council, my partner in crime here, Representative Boer. And I think for us, we want to make sure that we're partners in getting the word out about this consistently so that anyone who reads this story today see that their voice can really matter in state politics and state decision making, and that we want them a part of government. So thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Representative Farrar. One champion of this legislation in the state Senate over the course of almost 3 years that it took us to get this over the finish line is Senator May Flexer, who herself has a baby daughter, Rose, and she just was so critical to making this happen. So Senator Flexer, if you would come up and say a couple words. Thank you for your efforts.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz. It's an honor to be here this morning and to celebrate the passage of this legislation. I want to first of all thank my colleagues in the legislature for their work on this legislation. I know we've heard this morning from Representative Bora, Representative Farrar, who worked really hard on this legislation, and the great outcome we have here is in large part due to their hard work. I also want to thank my wonderful colleague, Senator Marilyn Moore, who, if you were able to catch the debate we had in the state Senate on this piece of legislation, she was absolutely tremendous that day in her advocacy for this legislation. And I want to thank Secretary of State Denise Merrill for her great work on this bill. And I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz and Governor Ned Lamont for their work on this legislation. The Council on Women and Girls and this legislation that's here before us demonstrates to me the commitment of the Lamont-Bysiewicz administration to reshaping state government and making equity the focus of so much of what we're trying to do. This legislation that, first of all, opens up our campaign finance system to parents and makes it clear that we need more parents of young children running for office, that our state's campaign finance system can be better. And I want to thank Caitlin Clarkson-Pereira, who was the trailblazer for fighting the State Elections Enforcement Commission and getting us to this point today where it is now the law of the state of Connecticut that our campaign finance system, our wonderful citizens election program, is more equitable and more open, because it will change who serves. The Citizens Election Program has already changed who serves in the Connecticut General Assembly, but there's much more work to do. As we've heard here this morning, only a third of our state legislature is female. Still, we are so far behind, frankly. It's been about a third for quite some time, and this legislation will hopefully be a big part of changing that. There are states in other parts of the country, like in Colorado and Nevada, where state legislatures are made up of more than 50% women. Connecticut needs to catch up, and this legislation is going to be a big part of changing that. You've also heard here this morning the importance of our state boards and commissions. These boards and commissions are the places where decisions are made. The legislation that we debate in the General Assembly and the laws that we contemplate putting in place are often first debated by our boards and commissions or implemented by our boards and commission. It matters who has a seat at that table, and for far too long, it's been the same group of people sitting around those tables. This legislation will change that. It's changing who's making decisions on boards, who's making decisions on commissions, and who's making decisions in our Connecticut General Assembly. This is a wonderful accomplishment. I'm so thrilled to be here today. And again, I want to thank the leadership of Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz and Governor Ned Lamont for advocating for this legislation and bringing us here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Flexer. And I think one other point needs to be made about election funding for child care, because at the federal level, the Federal Election Commission years ago said that federal candidates can use funding for child care. So we had this crazy outcome where Representative Johanna Hayes, as a candidate, was able to use campaign funds to care for her son, who was then 8, but Caitlin Pereira could not. And one of the reasons that this issue came to our attention is because Hillary Clinton and other federal advocates saw what was happening in Connecticut and added their voice to this fight. Now, the Council on Women and Girls has the participation of every one of our commissioners, and we have 2 of them here with us today who are going to say a few words, who help us lead the Council on Women and Girls. And I'm going to bring up our Commissioner Magubani to say a couple of words.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Lamont. I am just so honored to have been part of the Lamont and Bysiewicz administration. The Council on Women and Girls is so important. I am co-chair of the STEAM subcommittee, where our goal is to encourage young girls to participate in the sciences. And so 2 weeks ago, we had a very important program where we actually received over 254 submissions to the coding challenge, where the majority of the participants were young girls. Our goal is to nurture this interest so that over time, we're going to see more women and girls in coding, in science, creating all kinds of new applications. So I'm just so honored with this, the work that we've done as part of the council, and I look forward to the coming year where we will continue to work together to really move the needle around women and girls' participation in the sciences. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm also going to introduce another one of our commissioners and one of the leaders of our subcommittees, Commissioner Vanessa Durantes.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning, everyone. I have the esteemed pleasure of tri-chairing the Health and Safety Subcommittee of the Women and Girls Council. And my two tri-chairs, along with Commissioner Beth Bai of the Office of Early Childhood and the former Commissioner Miriam Delphin-Rittman. As you know, Commissioner Delphin-Rittman has been tapped by the Biden administration to lead SAMHSA, and her work in substance use and mental health here in Connecticut will now be leading the country in understanding how we defeat this opioid crisis and the impact of mental health across the lifespan. So we could not be more proud of her and the efforts that she has led, not only in the Women and Girls Council, but across Connecticut. And now we will see her doing that on a national stage. Thank you to the Governor and Lieutenant Governor for your emphasis on equity and the importance of recognizing women and girls in everything that we do here in Connecticut. The Health and Safety Subcommittee, of course, has been busy this year. The pandemic has ravaged all of our communities, and we understand that women many times are the backbone of not only our families, but our communities. And so as we recover better and stronger than we were before. Women will be leading the way, and we're really happy to continue to lead the work of not only the subcommittee, but the entire council, and are happy for our inside government and outside government and across 3 branch partners to make this happen. So thank you so much for advancing this package and advancing the work of women and girls in Connecticut.
Excellent. Okay, I lied. We actually have 3 of our commissioners here. So I'm going to bring up our housing commissioner, Selah Mascara Bruno. Selah, come right up.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And Governor and everybody, thank you very much for this legislation. And as a member of the council, I couldn't be more honored to be able to participate and to expand in the agenda for women and girls. In my group, we have been working on a leadership for women and girls and everyone that wants to participate in a housing and community development to expand diversity and to bring more talent into the affordable housing development field. And we have 22 participants today, and 20 of them are women of color. So we will continue working on that. Thank you for your support, Governor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And it's just an honor to be working with you guys.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I mentioned that we have more than 100 organizations, partner organizations, that assist with the Council on Women and Girls, and one of the reasons why our legislation was so successful is because we had all of these leaders and voices in communities across the state advocating for it. So I'd like to bring up Adrienne Cochran, who leads the YWCA of the Hartford area. Adrienne.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So good morning, but before I start, let it not be lost on us that we're in an early learning center. We're in a child care center. Women and families need safe, affordable child care that they can depend upon. And while that is some of the backbone of this legislation, this is needed for women who are not running for office, women who need to go to the office, women who need to go to school, women who need to do things to help better the situation for themselves and their families. So I'm grateful, I am very grateful that this is the spot that we're holding this. I want to echo the sentiment of the wonderful speakers before me in thanking the Lieutenant Governor, and first the Governor, for even establishing this Council of Women and Girls. And whatever was the impetus to really get him going, it has been wonderful. Because what it said to organizations like the YWCA Hartford Region is that we do have an advocate in this fight. Let us not forget the advocates. The legislation can come, individuals may speak, but if the people don't stand behind it, if the people don't give it teeth, If the people don't push it over the finish line, it doesn't happen. This is a wonderful day. We celebrate, both with our team from YWCA Hartford Region and many of the other advocates in this work, the passage of the Crown Act that says a woman has a right to wear her crown in glory however she should choose. The declaration of racism as exactly what it is, a public health crisis. And today, accountability about who serves on commissions and boards, and the opportunity for women in the state who need childcare and who need to be able to use some of those funds to utilize those services while they are running for office, that can happen. This is all wonderful today, and we're grateful. And as you've heard many times before, this is the beginning. This is not the end. For over 155 years, YWCA Hartford Region has stood firmly right at the intersection of racial justice and gender equity. You cannot have one without the other. We will continue to stand. I am proud of our team. I am proud of the work that we are able to do. And I'm proud of being a member of the council that actually has put some teeth into the words. And as that popular song, or once popular song, says, there ain't no stopping us now. There you go. Thank you.
Adrienne, thank you so much. And our final speaker before the governor is someone who's been championing the idea of campaign funding being used for child care for candidates, is the Vote Mama organization that has been supporting this movement all across the country. So it is my pleasure to bring up Sarah Haig, who's going to talk about what she's been doing all over the country. Sarah.
Thank you. How can I follow that?
I know.
I want to thank Governor Lamont, Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz, the Governor's Council on Women and Girls, Caitlin Clarkson-Pereira, and all of the representatives here today for their leadership on this legislation. My name is Sarah Haig. I am the political director of the Vote Mama Foundation, an organization working nationally to break down the barriers moms too often face while running for office, namely the cost of childcare. I know many of us can agree that the cost of childcare is too high for too many families. That's holding many moms back from running for office, and it's depriving us of a critical voice in our government who will act on the issues that matter most to families because they've lived them. That's why Vote Mama Foundation was founded. Our founder, Luba Gretchen Shirley, ran for Congress in 2018 when her kids were just 1 and 3 years old. After months of balancing childcare at home and going out to meet constituents and attend community meetings, her schedule became unsustainable. But she had given up her salary to run for office and couldn't afford childcare. So Luba petitioned the Federal Election Commission and became the first woman to receive federal approval to spend campaign funds on childcare. And more than 50 moms and dads, Democrats and Republicans, have since used their campaign funds to pay for childcare when running for federal office. However, that decision does not apply to state and local candidates. At Vote Mama Foundation, we're working to pass legislation allowing state and local candidates to use campaign funds on childcare in all 50 states by 2023. I am so thrilled that Connecticut, my home state, is leading the way nationally and becoming the 13th state to allow candidates to use their campaign funds on childcare. The first step to empowering a diverse pipeline of working mothers to run for office and win is for candidates to no longer have to consider the cost of childcare in weighing their decision to run for office. By making this simple structural change, we can completely change the way working parents, especially mothers, run for office and transform the political landscape here in Connecticut and across the nation. So again, thank you so much. We're so excited to see more moms step up and run for office here in Connecticut because of your leadership on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. thank you so much. And to get back to where we started, I want to thank this beautiful facility that has helped so many legislators along the way for hosting us today. And I want to go back to childcare because one of Governor Lamont's most important priorities in reopening our economy as we dealt with the pandemic, where we lost 50,000 child care spots across Connecticut. He recognized early that in order to get people back to work, we needed to rebuild our child care infrastructure. Child care is critical infrastructure to our economy, and we've invested at the governor's request almost $200 million in helping early child care centers across the state open and rebuild. So it is my honor to, yeah, we should clap for that. And shout out to our amazing Commissioner Beth Bai, who really brought us to the place where we could do that. So now it's my honor to introduce our fearless leader, Governor Ned Lamont.
All right, well, thanks for inviting me. And hey, Marilyn, I think your description of our first phone call was pretty accurate. I resemble that comment. And Susan was pushing hard as well, and I'm going to tell you something. You were pushing on an open door.
Yep.
This is something that means a lot. And it means a lot, I'll tell you, as a leader. Let me say something to the CEOs out there that look a little like me. And some of you say, well, you're so woke, and what's all this family-friendly stuff, and affirmative action, and equity, you know, that's nice. You are a lousy leader if you do what CEOs in this country have done for the last 100 years. And they've generally said, round up the usual suspects. And you know what you do? You lose a lot of amazing talent with that, and you set your company behind, and you set your government behind, you set your not-for-profit behind. And we're not going to stand for it in Connecticut. And we have benefited so much by casting the net as wide as we possibly can. You're telling me, Vanessa, I mean, she would not have been our head of DCF under the old regime of doing things. She's the most remarkable leader for those kids this state has seen. What a difference it's making. You know? Same with Selah. Selah's there because she was a developer and did affordable housing and knows what it's like on both sides of that table. And Bongi, where'd Bongi go? There's Bongi. You know, Bongi, what do you, the technology person from Aetna, what does that have to do with DMV? Have you seen DMV in the last year? I mean, people kind of like going to DMV and they don't even have to go to DMV. And Susan and Melissa taking the lead on this every day. You know, Melissa McCaw, she took over a budget that was almost $4 billion in deficit and worked round the clock for months on end to get this done. She wouldn't have been able to do it if she didn't have that opportunity. She wouldn't have been able to do it if we didn't have a decent daycare and childcare, and if her mother-in-law wasn't in town as well. You know, Indra Nui, my friend who, you know, led Pepsi. Imagine if they had said, oh, no, let's get the usual guy in there. You lose so much by playing that game. We don't play that game in Connecticut. I am proud of the fact that we have the most diverse set of leaders in the history of the state here leading the state. I think it makes an enormous difference. And I think it's important not only for our commissioners, I think it's not only important for our state senators and state house and the leaders we've got right now. We're making a special effort to do that with our teachers, recruit more teachers of color, and by the way, recruit some guys to do some teaching as well. Absolutely. I need that in judges so that when people look up and they see a judge, they know it's not somebody who just knows the law, but maybe looks a little like them and they can understand who they are and what that means. These are the state police. We are having an extra class of state police this year, and for the second year in a row, it is the most diverse group of state policemen we've ever had. can you say community policing and you don't know anything about the community? So I just say, look, this is the right thing to do. It is about equity. It is about fairness. It is about being family friendly. And you are one dumb leader if you don't do it this way. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so tell us how you really feel, Governor. So, Ms. Cherie, General Counsel, can you start? So, Cherie I feel like this bill had a very long pregnancy of over 2.5 years. And Cherie was pregnant and had a baby, and I think we should celebrate that great effort. So let's give that one to Cherie.
Cherie.
Oh, excellent.
You got a plastic pen, isn't that
Okay, all right. To May. Senator Flexer. Okay, there you go, May. We're going to give you a pen. And there you go. Look, he's really
I'm getting better at this.
Dorinda, there you go. Kate, for you. All right, and let's see. Let's give that to May. Okay, and we're going to do this one for Regular. There you go. All right, and vote, Mama. You need a pen. Thank you.
Vote, Mama.
Okay, and we're going to give this to Dorinda, and then Kate's going to get this one right here, and let me give you a pen, ma'am. All right. Okay. All right, here you go. And Kate, there you are. All right.
Everybody for being here.
All right, so all right, so any questions? We want to thank all of our media partners so much for coming. Any questions about the bill?
I just want to ask, okay, can somebody explain to me why it is so important to have women of childbearing age in elected office?
So I'll start, and then we can have Senator Flexer come up as well. So when I ran for state representative in 1992, when I went around campaigning, I knocked on the door of a woman who said, Susan, we need to fix childcare in Connecticut. And I said, well, what would you like? And she said, my 3-year-old child was killed in the parking lot of a daycare center in Middletown, and we need stronger protections. So that was the first bill that I introduced when I got to the legislature, and it was something that spoke to me because at the time my daughter Ava was a baby, and I started looking into it, and I realized that much more needs to be done. So from my perspective, it's so important to have women who have children serving at the legislature because they speak for the families of our state and to concerns that so many families have. And when I got to the legislature, I was the youngest woman, and there were not other legislators that had young children like I did. So Senator Flexer, do you want to say a couple words about that as well?
Sure. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And it's a really great question. First of all, who's at the table changes the decisions that are made at that table.
Yes.
And it's been shown that when women are serving in elected office, whether that be the General Assembly or in Congress, they pass more legislation, and more legislation that's directly related to the needs of families. It really matters. And as Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz was talking about, unfortunately, not a lot has changed in the time since Ava was a baby.
Yeah.
The makeup of the General Assembly hasn't changed enough. And there have been, for all that intervening time, a number of people who've served who are the parents of young children, but often they're men. And that hasn't changed things enough. And so there needs to be, frankly, I think, more women, because that's where the change happens. That's where the evidence shows that when women who are mothers of young children are serving in elected office, that's when the policy initiatives change. And so that's why this legislation is absolutely so critical. It really matters. Who's serving. It's just a completely different perspective, whether you're talking about the issues that are being debated, whether it's wonderful things like we're doing here in Connecticut with paid family and medical leave or other initiatives, but it also changed the way the entity works. I hope maybe meeting until 4 o'clock in the morning isn't the greatest thing when you've got 3 mothers who want to get home in your legislative body. So maybe that will change things as well.
We would need some females in leadership at the legislature, however, to make that happen. Okay.
At the local and district level, because it's not just, campaign funding. It's also the political establishment. It's also town committees. It's also delegates to nominating conventions. What can you do to increase the number of women candidates being nominated for office?
So Paul, you are so right, because this gets us to why we only have a quarter of our or less than a third of our General Assembly is women. Because where do those candidates come from? They come from city councils. They come from boards of education. So finally, there has started to be a focus at the local level on getting candidates that are diverse. I'll tell you, a couple of years ago in Hartford, there were no women council candidates running in the entire city of Hartford, and I just ask rhetorically, what's wrong with that picture? But now you look at candidates for local office in Manchester, in Wyndham, in Middletown, you will see broadly diverse candidates, because town committees have woken up and said, we have to recruit diverse candidates. And I'm hoping that in a couple of years, you're going to have many more women who served at the local level who can step up and be part of our citizen election program and use some of that money for child care.
Governor, does Sarah Haig or anybody else have any survey data on how big an obstacle the lack of child care has been to women running for office, as opposed to other reasons for the disparity we see?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's hard to survey a negative. It's hard to survey people, right, mothers who would think about running for office and then say, no, I can't, because I can't afford childcare as the #1 issue. What we do have are anecdotal evidence, interviews with candidates from across the country in a report that we released in May. That's available at votemamafoundation.org. about what a difference being able to use campaign funds to pay for child care made. There are many federal candidates that say, this is the reason why I was able to run for office. It's been called a campaign saving option for them. I would also say that there are many things that keep women from running for office. There are many things that keep mothers from running for office. I think everyone can agree that child care costs is prohibitive for any parent to be able to go to work, to be able to, like you said. And we're dealing with that with the pandemic right now. We're seeing that. And I think that this legislation will allow many more mothers to run for office here in Connecticut.
Of the 12 other states, how many are publicly financed and how many are privately financed?
That's a great question. Connecticut is the first to have public financing. New York City also has public financing and allows candidates to use their campaign funds to pay for child care, even with that public financing. Connecticut is the 5th state to pass legislation allowing the use of campaign funds for child care just this year. And interestingly enough, it is only the 2nd democratically majority state to pass it this year.
And what's been the opposition, if any? I mean, I don't know if this has been proposed or nobody.
Thank you, Paul.
What has been the opposition? What has been the argument against utilizing campaign funds in this manner?
You know, we've seen pushback because of concern about any usage of campaign funds to pay for anything. But in most states, you can pay for new clothes, you can pay for tires for your cars, you can pay for pizza parties for staff, not here, other states that we've heard pushback. But you can't pay for childcare, for campaign-related expenses, and I think that is an important part of this to remember. The use of the campaign funds to pay for childcare is for childcare, just for campaign-related activity. And it is governed by the same rules and laws and governing authorities that any other campaign finance measure would be governed by.
If I could just add for the last two questions that were brought up, in addition to the wonderful opportunity I have of serving as a state senator, I'm also the executive director of an organization called Emerge Connecticut, where we train Democratic women to run for office. And so the information I have is anecdotal, but tonight we're about to graduate our 95th graduate of our program in 3.5 years. And through that network of women that we've built here in Connecticut, we've seen those barriers of building that pipeline. But what Emerge has been able to do, and other organizations have been able to do, is we've been able to connect women across communities. So a woman in Wyndham, who I don't think would have a hard time, but let's say she's got an Emerge sister in Middletown who had a similar problem a couple of years ago, and this is how she broke through it. So we're creating a pipeline that is a little bit spread out from community to community, but they're connected across the state, and that pipeline is slowly spilling up into the General Assembly and is starting to change the makeup of local boards and commissions and the makeup of the State House and the State Senate.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.
I don't know.